The sun had just begun to set over the small human settlement on the dusty alien planet, casting long orange shadows across the empty streets. A soft, frightened cry broke the silence, but it was quickly swallowed by the wind. No one noticed it, except a poor human mechanic named Jaren, who was finishing his work in the corner of his little workshop. He wiped grease from his hands and frowned. Listening carefully, the cries came again, softer this time, almost like whispers, and Jaren realized they were coming from the edge of town, near the rocky cliffs that marked the border of the settlement. Curiosity and concern pushed him to step outside, his boots crunching over the scattered rocks. There, huddled together, were two small alien girls, their skin a pale lavender, hair long and silvery and eyes wide with fear. They looked almost like fragile statues. Trembling and hiding behind a broken crate, Jaren instinctively crouched down, speaking softly, trying not to scare them. "Hey, it's okay, I won't hurt you," he said. His voice gentle yet steady. The girls did not answer, but they looked at him with wary eyes, as if trying to measure his soul. The older sister, who could not have been more than 12, shifted protectively in front of the younger one, her small hands clutching the torn hem of her dress. Jaren noticed their clothes were torn and dirty, and their hover packs were damaged and useless. He understood at once that they had been through a lot, and perhaps were lost or running from danger without thinking. Jaren took off his jacket and carefully draped it over the girls' shoulders, hoping to offer some warmth. They flinched at first, then slowly accepted the gesture, their tiny fingers brushing against his hand. Trembling but trusting a little, Jaren led them back to his workshop, the girls walking cautiously behind him. Inside, the room was small but filled with tools and parts, old machines waiting to be fixed, and the faint smell of oil and metal hanging in the air. He guided the sisters to a corner and gathered some soft rags to make them a small bed. They sat down slowly, hugging each other, and for the first time their breathing became calmer. Jaren began working quickly, tearing old cloth into strips to bandage small cuts and scratches on their arms and legs. The girls whispered in their strange language, but Jaren did not understand. He smiled reassuringly, nodding, hoping they would feel safe. As he worked, the older sister's gaze lingered on him. Wide and curious, she asked in broken English, "Father, coming?" Jaren paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. Unsure what she meant, the younger sister whispered something else, and the older one nodded, fear clouding her expression. Jaren realized they were talking about someone powerful, someone they feared, and his heart sank. He did not know if this father was friend or enemy, but he knew one thing: he had to keep these girls safe. No matter what, night fell and the workshop became dim, lit only by the small, flickering lamp Jaren had hung from the ceiling. Outside, the wind howled and strange noises echoed from the cliffs, making the girls cling to each other. Eyes wide in terror, Jaren made sure the door was locked, and he pulled out old scraps of metal to reinforce the windows. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound like a threat, yet Jaren remained calm, pretending nothing was wrong to help the girls feel safe. He sat down across from them, offering a small piece of bread, and smiled. "Eat. You must be hungry," he said softly. And for a moment their fear eased, replaced by a glimmer of trust. Hours passed slowly, the night stretching long and silent. Jaren could not sleep, listening for any sound, imagining dangers hiding in the dark. He looked at the girls, fragile and tired, and promised himself silently, "I will not let anything happen to you, not while I am here." Little did he know this simple act of kindness, of taking care of two stranded alien sisters, would change everything. By the morning, events would unfold that would bring fear, awe, and the arrival of a power far greater than he could imagine. For now, in this quiet workshop, there was only trust, care, and the fragile beginnings of an unlikely friendship. The morning sun rose slowly, spilling pale light across the small human town. Jaren sat quietly in his workshop, sipping a bitter cup of coffee, while the two alien sisters sat huddled on their makeshift bed, whispering to each other. Their eyes darted constantly to the windows, watching for any sign of danger. Jaren could see their fear, but he also noticed something else: their sharp minds and quick movements. Even in this state of exhaustion, it struck him that these were no ordinary children, and that their story must be extraordinary. Suddenly, the older sister, Lyra, stood up and pointed to the horizon, her voice trembling but firm. "Hunters, coming," she warned, and her younger sister, Mina, clutched her arm tightly, eyes wide. Jaren froze, scanning the distant cliffs, and then he saw them. small specks moving swiftly across the rocky terrain, almost glinting in the sunlight. "They are fast," Lyra said softly. "They will take us back." Or worse, Jaren's heart pounded. But he did not panic. Instead, he thought quickly. He had spent his life fixing broken machines and building clever tools from scraps. Maybe that skill could save them now. He ran to the back of his workshop, gathering spare wires, metal sheets, and old gadgets the sisters watched. Their fear mixed with curiosity. Jaren began to construct small traps and alarms around the perimeter. Using everything he had, he tied a few strings across the doorframe, attached makeshift bells, and even rigged a small tripwire to knock over a stack of metal crates. Clever traps. "Human clever," Lyra whispered, impressed, and for a moment her fear eased, replaced by cautious hope. Outside, the hunters approached, their strange machines gliding silently over the rocks, almost floating. They were alien in form, tall and armored, their eyes glowing faint red. Scanning the ground as they moved, Jaren ducked low, hiding behind his workshop walls, while the sisters stayed quiet, holding their breath. The first hunter stepped onto the tripwire, and a loud crash echoed as crates tumbled over, bells jingling madly. The hunter froze, spinning around, but the sound had already bought precious seconds. Jaren ran from trap to trap, setting off small alarms to confuse them. He shouted occasionally, throwing their attention, making it seem like more people were in the town. The sisters followed his lead, small but determined, throwing stones and waving scraps of metal to distract the hunters. Each move was tense, a game of life and death, and the air was thick with suspense. The hunters moved carefully now, cautious yet relentless, their glowing eyes scanning every corner. Jaren realized these were highly trained, and one mistake could cost them everything. Suddenly, the younger sister, Mina, whispered urgently, pointing upward. A shadow moved across the sky, massive and swift. Different from the hunters below, Jaren squinted and saw a large scanning drone, shaped like no human machine he had ever seen. Gliding silently above the town, Lyra's voice trembled. "Father, he watches." The air grew heavier, the tension sharper. Jaren's mind raced. He had no weapons. No army, just his tools, his brains, and these two brave girls. The hunters finally reached the edge of the town. Moving cautiously around the traps, Jaren led the sisters into a narrow alley, small enough for them to hide. They crouched behind crates and barrels, hearts pounding, breath shallow, eyes wide with fear and excitement. One hunter paused, scanning, almost sensing their presence. Jaren held his breath, thinking of every tiny detail, every scrap of metal that could give them an edge. He whispered to the sisters, "Stay still. Follow my lead. We can outsmart them." The girls nodded silently, trusting him completely, their small hands clutching his sleeve. Minutes felt like hours as the hunters slowly advanced. Then, with one clever move, Jaren triggered the last trap, a chain of falling metal creating a loud crash and cloud of dust. The hunters stumbled back, confused and momentarily blinded. Jaren grabbed the sisters' hands, running swiftly to the next alley. Disappearing behind the town walls, Lyra looked up, seeing the massive shadow of the drone retreating slowly. "They are coming," she whispered, "but not yet. We have time." Jaren smiled, exhausted but determined, knowing this was only the beginning. The bond between the poor human mechanic and the two alien sisters had grown stronger, forged in fear, trust, and clever survival. And far above, the father's gaze watched silently, waiting, calculating. The story had only just begun, and soon the stakes would grow higher for Jaren. The next hours would test every skill he had, and the small act of saving two lost alien girls would ripple into events that could shake the stars itself. The night fell heavier than usual, shadows stretching across the small human settlement like dark fingers. Jaren sat at his workbench, his hands busy repairing broken metal parts. But his mind raced with worry. The two alien sisters, Lyra and Mina, watched him silently, their eyes reflecting the flickering light of the oil lamp. Even though they were safe for now, a deep fear lingered in their gaze. The hunters had not given up, and their father's presence was still felt. Like a shadow over the town, Lyra finally spoke, her voice low but urgent. "You must know. We cannot stay long," she said, twisting her hands nervously. Jaren paused, looking at her. "I know, but tell me, what happened to you? Why are you here?" The sisters exchanged a quick glance before Lyra whispered, "Our planet, it is in danger. We were taken. The army." Her voice trembled, leaving Jaren to fill in the blanks. Imagining battles, ships, and powers beyond his understanding, he realized that these small girls carried secrets bigger than the town itself. Secrets that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. As he worked, he noticed a faint hum coming from the horizon. Almost like a low vibration in the air, Mina's eyes widened. "They are near. Scouts," she warned, her tiny hands gripping her sister's arm. Jaren's heart raced, but he did not panic. He had prepared for moments like this. He grabbed an old discarded scanner from the bench, patched it with wires and blinking lights, and aimed it at the horizon. The scanner flickered, then revealed the faint outlines of moving ships, scouts, small but fast, approaching the town from the rocky cliffs. Jaren's mind raced. He needed a plan. And he needed it fast, Lyra whispered urgently. "Father." "He watches through them. He will know if we hide too long." Jaren frowned, realizing the stakes were higher than he thought. This was not just about protecting two children. It was about surviving under the watch of a father who commanded an army. A father whose power could crush any human town in moments. Yet Jaren did not feel fear, only determination. He had always fixed broken machines, always solved impossible problems, and now, those same skills were their only hope. He began to construct a clever diversion using scraps of metal, mirrors and old motors. He rigged small reflective panels along the edges of the town, angled to catch light from the moon. When the scouts approached, the reflections flashed, creating illusions of movement, confusing their sensors. Lyra and Mina watched in awe as Jaren worked, each flick of his hand precise, each wire and panel placed with care. For the first time, the girls smiled faintly, hope shining through their fear. "Human. Clever," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible, but full of respect. Minutes later, the scout ships hovered closer, scanning the streets, their sensors flickering over the reflective panels. Jaren held his breath as the girls crouched behind a stack of crates. Barely daring to move, a scout drone pivoted, sending a low hum across the town, but it could not distinguish the reflections from real movement. The tension was almost unbearable, every second stretching like hours. Then, just as the scouts seemed about to detect them, a loud crash echoed from the far side of town. Jaren had triggered a secondary trap, sending metal crates tumbling down, creating a chaotic distraction. The scouts faltered, unable to understand what was happening, and Jaren grabbed the sisters, running toward the narrow alleys he had scouted earlier. They darted through shadows, hearts pounding, footsteps silent against the rocky ground. Lyra's voice whispered urgently, "Quick, follow me. We know a place." She led them to a hidden corner of the town, a small abandoned workshop, almost invisible to the untrained eye. Jaren ducked inside with them, closing the rusted door behind. Barely breathing, barely moving outside, the scout ships hovered, their glowing eyes scanning every corner. For a moment, Jaren felt the full weight of the alien father's presence, as if those glowing eyes were more than machines. They were the gaze of a man who could see through the smallest deception. He tightened his grip on a scrap pipe, ready for anything, while the girls whispered in their alien tongue, clearly planning their next move. Jaren realized something important. These girls were not helpless, they were clever, brave and loyal, and together they formed a team that even an army could struggle to defeat. And high above, hidden among the stars, a massive shadow moved silently, watching, calculating, waiting for the right moment. The story was far from over, and the bond between a poor human mechanic and two alien sisters was about to be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. Night fell over the small human settlement like a thick, dark blanket hiding every alley and rooftop in shadows. Jaren sat quietly in his workshop with the two alien sisters, Lyra and Mina, their faces pale in the flickering lamplight. The girls whispered to each other in their soft alien language, voices low, urgent, filled with fear and anticipation. Outside, the wind howled through the narrow streets, carrying the faint hum of distant engines. Jaren's heart pounded, knowing that the hunters had not given up, and worse, that the father's shadow loomed closer. Unseen but felt, Lyra suddenly stood, her eyes scanning the windows, her small body tense. "They are coming tonight," she said, voice trembling. "They will try to take us while the town sleeps." Jaren frowned, gripping a metal pipe he had repurposed as a makeshift weapon. "Then we will be ready. Stay close to me." Mina clutched her sister's hand tightly, and Jaren felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, heavier than any machine he had ever repaired. He knew that if the girls were taken, nothing could stop the father's wrath, and their small town would pay the price. The first sound came faintly, almost like whispers against the walls. Shadows moved along the edges of the town, silent but deliberate. Jaren's traps were set, tripwires, alarms, and falling metal panels. But he knew clever hunters might anticipate some. He whispered to the girls, "Follow my lead. Don't make a sound. Watch closely." They nodded silently, trusting him completely, their eyes wide with fear and determination. A sudden crash from the far alley signaled the hunters' arrival. Two armored figures stepped into the dim light, scanning carefully, their glowing red eyes sweeping over every corner. Jaren ducked behind a pile of crates, silently motioning the girls to follow. He threw a small piece of scrap metal across the street, creating a loud clang, and the hunters flinched. Momentarily distracted, Lyra whispered, "Good thinking. Human clever." Jaren smiled faintly, but his heart raced, knowing they could be discovered at any moment. The hunters split, moving slowly around the traps Jaren had set, almost like predators circling their prey. Mina gasped quietly as one passed dangerously close, her small hands gripping her sister's arm. Jaren motioned for them to move along a narrow passage only he had scouted, leading to an old abandoned storage shed. They moved swiftly, shadows blending with shadows, their breaths shallow, every step calculated. Outside, the hunters paused, scanning, sensing that something was not right. Jaren knew they had only minutes before the main force arrived, and he had to use that time wisely. Inside the shed, the girls huddled together. Eyes wide and alert, Jaren whispered, "We are safe for now, but we need to be ready for what comes next." Lyra's voice trembled. "Father, he is close. I can feel him." Jaren nodded, understanding that this was no ordinary threat. The alien father's presence was like a storm, invisible but undeniable. He could crush them all with a thought. Yet Jaren's courage and quick thinking gave them a fragile chance. Suddenly, a bright light cut through a crack in the shed. Blinding them for a moment, a drone, small but advanced, hovered silently, scanning every corner. Its sensors glowing faint blue, Jaren acted instantly, grabbing a rusted mirror from the shed, angling it toward the drone's light. The reflection confused its sensors, and the drone tilted, hesitating, giving them precious seconds. Mina clutched Lyra, eyes wide with wonder, whispering, "Human. Genius." Jaren did not smile, his mind focused on the next move, on keeping them alive. Then, from the distance, a low rumble shook the ground, far larger than any drone or hunter. The girls froze, their eyes reflecting both fear and awe. Jaren whispered, "That is him?" Lyra's face paled. "Father, he is coming." The air grew thick with tension, and the night seemed heavier, darker. Every sound, every shadow, could mean discovery or death. Jaren's mind raced, planning, calculating, imagining every possibility. He knew the next few hours would test every skill he had. And in the quiet corner of the shed, with the two alien sisters clinging to him, he realized something important. They were no longer just children he was saving. They were the key to something bigger, something that could change the balance of power across planets. And tonight, in the shadows and whispers of a small human town, the first sparks of that destiny had begun. The horizon glowed faintly with the first light of dawn, but it was not the sun that drew every eye in the small town. A massive shadow moved across the sky, casting a chill over the rooftops and streets. Jaren stood near his workshop, the two alien sisters by his side, hearts pounding in unison. They all stared, frozen, as one by one, enormous warships descended slowly, their hulls gleaming like polished metal. The ground trembled beneath their weight, and the air was filled with a low, humming roar, a sound unlike anything Jaren had ever heard. From the largest ship, a ramp extended toward the town, heavy and silent. A figure stepped forward, tall and imposing, dressed in armor that gleamed even in the pale morning light. It was the father, Lyra and Mina's father, a man of legend on their home planet, feared by allies and enemies alike. He walked steadily, his presence radiating power, his glowing eyes scanning the town as if reading every thought. The elite guards behind him moved like shadows, perfectly synchronized, their weapons shimmering in the morning haze. Jaren's heart sank, fear and awe mingling as he realized the full weight of the situation. He was facing not hunters, but an army. Lyra clutched her father's hand in memory, her small body tense, whispering, "Father, forgive him. He saved us." The father stopped in front of Jaren's workshop, studying the small, poor human with sharp, calculating eyes. Jaren swallowed hard, feeling as though every heartbeat was loud enough for the entire army to hear. He thought of every tool, every clever trap, every small act of courage he had used to protect the girls. And now, it all led to this moment. Their lives in balance between judgment and mercy. The father's voice was deep, resonant, and calm, cutting through the morning air. "You saved my daughters," he said simply, but the weight of his words was heavy, like a mountain pressing down. Jaren's throat went dry, unsure what to say. I could not leave them alone." The father's gaze softened slightly as he turned to his guards, who lowered their weapons but stayed alert. Lyra and Mina stepped forward bravely, holding their father's gaze, their loyalty clear. "Father, he helped us. He saved us. We trust him," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tension. The father's eyes flickered with something unreadable, a mixture of curiosity, pride, and caution. Jaren felt a moment of relief, but he knew it could vanish in an instant. He watched as the father surveyed the town, the simple workshop, the humble tools scattered across the floor. Then unexpectedly the father smiled faintly, a rare gesture that softened the sharpness of his features. "You are clever, brave, and resourceful," he said, nodding slowly. "Qualities I value highly." Jaren's eyes widened, hope flickering in his chest. The elite guards remained vigilant, but the tension eased slightly, as if the father's judgment had shifted the balance. The townspeople emerged slowly, eyes wide, mouths agape, witnessing the massive alien army and their leader. Some whispered in fear, others in awe, but all understood that something extraordinary was happening. The father turned to the crowd, his voice commanding yet calm. "This human is no enemy. He protected my daughters when no one else would. He earns our respect." The town seemed to breathe collectively, relief mixing with amazement. Jaren stepped forward cautiously, unsure if he should bow or speak, but the father simply nodded, signaling acceptance. Lyra and Mina ran to Jaren, their small hands clutching his arms tightly, smiles breaking through their fear. "Thank you, human. You saved us," Mina whispered, her eyes shining with gratitude. Jaren smiled, feeling a warmth he had never known, proud and relieved, yet still aware of the immense power that now surrounded them. The father looked over his army, then back at Jaren. "Come, there is more you will need to learn. The galaxy is not safe, and your courage has earned a place among those who protect it." The sun rose fully, casting light on the tiny town, now filled with the gleaming presence of alien ships and soldiers. Jaren realized that his life, and the lives of the two alien sisters, had changed forever. The poor human mechanic who had saved two small girls now stood at the threshold of an adventure larger than he could imagine, and above the skies seemed to shimmer, as if the stars themselves were watching. For this was only the beginning, and the galaxy held challenges, wonders, and dangers that even Jaren's clever mind would have to face. The morning light had fully settled over the small human town, but the presence of the alien army made every shadow feel alive. Jaren stood quietly in the town square, the two alien sisters by his side, as the massive figure of their father approached. His armor gleamed in the sun, his eyes sharp and calculating, and the elite guards flanked him like silent shadows. The townspeople watched from behind doors and windows, their eyes wide with awe and fear, whispering to each other about the human who had dared to save alien royalty. The father's gaze fell upon Jaren, piercing and unyielding as if weighing every thought and every intention. "You saved my daughters," he said, his voice deep and calm, yet filled with authority. "But words alone do not prove courage." Jaren swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment, yet his hands remained steady, his posture firm. I did what anyone should have done," he said quietly, though he knew these words alone might not be enough. Lyra and Mina stepped forward, their small forms brave and unwavering. "Father, he cared for us. He protected us when no one else would." Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tension. Mina nodded, adding, "He used his mind, his cleverness, to keep us safe, even from the hunters." The father's eyes softened slightly as he studied his daughters, then turned back to Jaren. "You are resourceful, brave, and quick-thinking," he said slowly. "Yet I must see if your courage can withstand true pressure." He gestured to his guards, and one stepped forward with a small, puzzle-like device, its purpose unclear to Jaren. "This will test your mind and skill," the father said. "If you fail, the consequences may be severe." Jaren felt his pulse quicken, but he nodded, stepping forward to examine the device. It was intricate, filled with moving parts, levers, and symbols he had never seen. He could see why even adults from this planet might struggle, yet he did not falter. Using his knowledge of mechanics, logic, and improvisation, he began to manipulate the device carefully, his fingers precise and steady. Minutes passed like hours as the elite guards watched silently, and the sisters held their breath, eyes wide. The townspeople leaned from windows, unable to look away, sensing the gravity of the trial. Jaren's mind raced, analyzing each lever and gear, imagining how the alien mechanics were connected. He thought of every trap he had set, every makeshift solution he had used to protect the sisters. And slowly, piece by piece, the device began to respond, parts moving in harmony, lights flickering until finally, with a soft click, the device completed its sequence. A low hum echoed across the square, and the father's eyes gleamed with interest. He stepped closer to Jaren, studying him carefully, a faint smile forming on his lips. "You have succeeded," he said calmly, but the weight of his approval felt monumental. Not just through strength, but through cleverness, courage, and care. Jaren exhaled slowly, relief washing over him, but he did not relax completely, knowing the father's approval carried immense significance. The sisters ran forward, hugging Jaren tightly, their faces filled with gratitude and awe. "You did it, human. You passed," Lyra whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. Mina nodded vigorously. "You are brave. The bravest I know." The father watched silently, then knelt slightly, lowering himself to Jaren's level. "You have proven yourself worthy of trust and respect," he said, his voice softer now, filled with genuine acknowledgement. "You have protected my daughters, used your mind and heart wisely, and faced fear without hesitation." Jaren felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and something he had never expected. Recognition from beings far beyond his world. The townspeople slowly came forward, marveling at the human who had earned the respect of an alien warlord. Even the elite guard seemed impressed, their strict expressions softening as they watched. The father nodded to his daughters, who beamed with pride, and then back to Jaren. "You are not only a protector of my children, but a potential ally to our people." Jaren realized in that moment that his life had changed forever. He had gone from a simple mechanic, unnoticed in his small town, to someone respected across planets, valued not for strength alone but for courage, cleverness, and a compassionate heart. And high above, the alien fleet shimmered under the morning sun, a silent reminder that the galaxy was watching. This trial was over, but the adventure, the challenges, and the bonds they had formed were only just beginning. Jaren looked at the sisters, their smiles bright and confident, and for the first time, he truly believed that together, they could face anything. The sun was high in the sky, casting bright light over the small human town, yet the presence of alien warships made everything feel surreal. Jaren stood beside Lyra and Mina, their faces glowing with relief and pride, while the massive alien father observed from a few steps away. The elite guards were still alert, but the tension had eased, replaced by curiosity and cautious admiration. The townspeople had gathered, eyes wide, whispering among themselves, amazed at the sight of the human who had earned the respect of an alien warlord. The father finally spoke, his deep voice carrying over the square. "Jaren, you have proven yourself not only clever and brave, but also compassionate, the rarest quality of all." Jaren bowed slightly, unsure what to say. his heart pounding with a mix of pride and awe. I only did what felt right, he said quietly, looking at the sisters who smiled at him with gratitude. Lyra stepped forward, her small hand reaching to touch his arm. You saved us when no one else would. You trusted us, helped us. You are our friend. Mina nodded beside her, eyes shining. And our father trusts you too. We all do. The father studied Jaren for a moment, then turned to his army, his voice commanding yet calm. Prepare to assist this town. It is small, but its people are capable and worthy of protection. The elite guards moved quickly, helping rebuild damaged roofs, reinforcing workshops, and sharing alien technology with the townspeople. Jaren watched in awe as the small town transformed before his eyes. Simple structures now reinforced with strange, shimmering materials. Even the townspeople, initially fearful of the alien presence, began to work together with them, learning quickly, smiling cautiously. Hope returning to their faces, Lyra and Mina ran to Jaren, tugging him toward one of the alien ships, eyes sparkling with excitement. There is so much we want to show you, Lyra said. So much to learn. And we need your help. Jaren laughed softly, feeling a thrill he had never known. He realized that his life, once quiet and ordinary, had become something extraordinary. Not because of wealth or power, but because he had acted with courage and kindness, and in return, he had found allies across the stars. The father approached slowly, placing a hand on Jaren's shoulder, his expression serious but approving. You have earned our trust, human. You may not understand the responsibilities yet, but your actions have proven your worth. Jaren nodded humbly. I will do my best to protect them, to help however I can. The father's gaze softened, and he gestured toward the horizon, where distant planets sparkled, hinting at adventures and challenges yet to come. The galaxy is vast, filled with dangers and wonders alike, he said, but together we can face them. You are no longer just a mechanic. You're part of our alliance, Lyra and Mina cheered softly, running toward their father, then back to Jaren. Their excitement infectious, Jaren felt a warmth in his chest, a deep satisfaction and joy, unlike anything he had experienced before. The townspeople, inspired by the events, began to gather tools and materials, ready to learn, ready to build, ready to protect. Even the elite guards, impressed by the humans' cleverness and bravery, smiled faintly, recognizing that courage and intelligence were sometimes stronger than armor and weapons. The father looked over the town one last time, then nodded to Jaren, signaling respect and acknowledgement. You are welcome here, and among my people, he said, voice filled with finality and promise. Jaren smiled, glancing at Lyra and Mina, knowing that their bond was unbreakable now, forged in trust, danger, and shared adventure. As the alien army slowly departed, leaving the town safer, stronger, and more confident, the human mechanic looked to the horizon, imagining the countless adventures awaiting them across the stars. The sisters clutched his arms, eyes full of hope and mischief. Human. We will go to places you cannot imagine. And you will come with us, Jaren laughed. A full, bright laugh, feeling alive, exhilarated, ready for anything. And above, the alien warships glinted in the sunlight like silent guardians, reminding everyone that bravery, kindness, and cleverness could create alliances that no force could break. The town was no longer just a small human settlement on a distant planet. It had become the beginning of something greater, a symbol of unity between worlds. And for Jaren, Lyra, and Mina, this was only the start of a journey filled with danger, discovery, and friendship that would stretch across the galaxy. For in the end, it was not power, not wealth, but courage, heart, and cleverness that truly shaped destinies. And somewhere in the stars, the next adventure waited, ready to test their limits and strengthen their bonds. But for now, the sun shone bright, the town was safe, and a poor human mechanic had become a hero, an ally, and a friend to two alien sisters and their powerful father. The story of trust, bravery, and unity across worlds had begun, and the galaxy would never forget it.